Welcome back to Strides to Solutions. I'm Esther Adams, and today I want to ask the biggest question this show has ever taken on. Who is making your reality? We have a default answer, and we absorbed it so young that it feels like common sense rather than a theory. The brain is in charge. It sits up there in its dark bone room, the commander, the author. The body is a messenger that delivers reports. The environment is scenery, and meaning gets applied at the very end like a label on a finished jar, brain first, everything else downstream. The research says that picture is wrong, not slightly wrong, structurally wrong, because it's a chain and reality is a loop. So here's our stride today. First, the body and how it isn't reporting to your brain so much as arguing with it. Then the finding that reorganized my thinking, which is that the same physical signal can become completely different experiences. Then the environment, which turns out not to be scenery at all. Then meaning, which is not the label on the jar, but part of what's inside it. And finally, what all this gives you, which is more than one door into your own life. Let's take the first step. Start with your body, because this is where the old model breaks first. Your brain is receiving a constant, unstoppable stream of signals from inside you. Your heart, your gut, your lungs, your muscles, your hormones, even your immune system. Researchers call this interoception, which just means the sensing of your own insides, and it isn't background noise. It's a major input into how you think, what you feel, and who you take yourself to be. There's evidence that this bodily layer is real and shared. When researchers asked people to map where they felt different emotions in their bodies, distinct emotions produced distinct and reliable maps. And when they scaled it up to nearly 4,000 people across 101 countries, those maps were remarkably consistent. Anger lives somewhere, shame lives somewhere else, and it lives there for a Finnish accountant and a farmer in Kenya alike. So the body is genuinely part of how emotion is made. Not a witness to emotion, a participant. But now here comes the part that turns the whole thing over, and I want you to sit with it, because everything else in this episode follows from it. The same bodily signal can become completely different experiences. Picture the physiology of a racing heart, tight chest, rapid breath, flooding adrenaline. On a roller coaster, that state is thrill. In a trauma flashback, a nearly matched profile is dread. Same body, opposite lives. And researchers make a similar point about pain, where the identical incoming signal can be experienced as relief in one frame and as suffering in another. Read that again because it's the crack in the whole commander brain story. If the body simply delivered emotions upward, this could not happen. The signal would arrive with its meaning attached, the way a letter arrives with an address. It doesn't. The signal arrives ambiguous. Something else decides what it becomes. So, what decides? This is where the conversation opens up. And the current view is that your brain is running predictions about your body and predictions about the world at the same time in a single joined up model. And your experience emerges from how those fit together. Your feeling is not a readout, it's an inference, a best guess about what this bodily state means, given where you are, what you expect, what you've learned, and what's at stake for you, which means the same racing heart genuinely can be fear or excitement or awe or the good electricity before you walk on stage. Not because you talked yourself into it, because the situation and the model together decided what the signal was for. Now let's talk about the environment, because we've been treating it as scenery and it is nothing of the kind. There's a body of research on what's called attunement, and the finding is quietly astonishing. The rhythms of the built environment, the spaces you actually move through, can entrain your neural dynamics. Your brain doesn't just look at a room. Over time, your brain falls into step with it, and that shapes attention, memory, and how your senses knit together. So the room you work in is not a container holding a person who is doing the thinking. The room is participating in the thinking. And if you heard the episode on self control, this should feel like a hand landing on your shoulder. We talked then about designing the room instead of hammering on the person. Here's the deeper reason that works. The room was never outside the system, it was always part of it. The coupling runs in every direction all the time. Your bodily state shapes what you notice in your environment. What you notice shapes your bodily state. Your movement changes what your senses can even collect. Researchers describe behavior as emerging from a closed feedback loop among nervous system, body, and world, where the shape of your body itself filters what comes in and what can go out. You are not a thinker with a body and a place, you are a loop. And there's a detail here I love so much, I want to hand it to you like a small stone. Researchers found that words shown at the exact moment the heart contracts, at systole, were remembered worse than words shown between beats. Your heartbeat is editing your memory right now as you listen. That is how deep this goes and how little of it you get to see. There's one more thing about the body I need to give you because it reverses the direction we assume. We picture the brain as reacting to the body gets hungry, the brain notices, you eat, report, then response. But the current models describe something called allostasis, which means anticipatory regulation. Your brain is not waiting for the body to run low and then scrambling. It is constantly predicting what your body will need and getting ahead of it, adjusting your heart rate, your hormones, your energy, before the need fully arrives. And feelings in this account are what that anticipatory management feels like from the inside. Your mood is not a commentary on your life, it's partly the felt texture of your brain's ongoing bet about the state of your body and what's coming for it, which is a strange and I think oddly comforting thought. Some of what you experience as dread about your future may be your brain managing your blood sugar and your sleep debt and reporting the forecast as a feeling, now meaning, and this is the part that most people get backwards, myself included, until I read this work. We treat meaning as the last coat of paint. First, the world happens, then the body reacts, then the brain processes, and then finally, we decide what it all meant, meaning as afterthought, meaning as commentary. The research puts meaning much earlier and much deeper. Meaning helps determine what the signal is. It doesn't describe your experience, it participates in constructing it. And the cleanest, least deniable proof of that is the placebo effect. Because a placebo is nothing but meaning. It has no active ingredient. What it changes is your expectation. And through your expectation, it reaches down and alters your physiology, your pain, your body, meaning running downhill into flesh. That is not the power of positive thinking or anything so flimsy. It's a measured demonstration that what you believe a signal means becomes part of what the signal does. The same machinery runs in the other direction, which is the nocebo effect, where an expectation of harm produces real harm. Meaning has teeth in both directions. Even language turns out to be part of the loop rather than a report on it. Research on pain finds that the metaphors people use can become embodied through clinical interaction, shaping how the pain is actually lived. The story is not a description of the experience, it's an ingredient. One more finding because it changes how we should think about people who seem to be affected by everything. There's a line of research on what's called differential susceptibility, and its central claim rearranged something in me. Some people are simply more open to their environment than others, and the usual framing calls that fragility, a vulnerability, a risk factor, but the research finds the sensitivity runs in both directions. The same people who are more affected by harsh environments are also more affected by supportive ones. They don't just break more easily, they also flourish more fully, given the right conditions. So the sensitive person is not a weaker version of a sturdy person. They are a more environmentally responsive one, which is a liability in a bad room and a gift in a good one. And that reframe has consequences for how we raise children, how we manage people, and how some of you talk to yourselves about being too much, and the sensitivity isn't even fixed. One study of adolescents found that their biological responsiveness to their socioeconomic circumstances fluctuated from day to day, depending on their stress physiology that day, meaning how much the world gets into you changes, not just across people, but across Tuesdays. Now, I want to be honest with you before I go further because I try to be in every episode. Not everyone buys this framing. Some critics argue that embodied cognition, this whole family of ideas, is vague and that in places it renames things we already understood without explaining more. That's a fair challenge, and I don't want to sell you a revolution that's partly a rebranding. What survives the criticism and what the evidence really does support is the core claim. Experience is not manufactured in the brain and then delivered to you. It emerges from the ongoing conversation among brain, body, environment, and meaning, and no single one of them is the author. Which finally lets me answer the question in the title: who creates your reality? Nobody does. Not the brain, not the body, not the world, not your beliefs. It's a conversation. And you are not the person having it, you are the conversation. That could sound like a loss, and I understand why. If there's no commander, no author sitting in the chair, then where are you in all this? But I think it's the opposite of a loss, and here's why. If reality is made in a single place, you have one door. If it's made in a conversation between four things, you have four. And that is genuinely practically useful because it means when you're stuck, you are never actually stuck in only one way. You can enter through the body: breath, sleep, movement, warmth, food, the state of your nervous system. This isn't self care as an indulgence. If bodily signals are raw material for feeling, then changing your body changes what your mind has to work with. The person who feels hopeless at midnight and merely tired at 9 in the morning did not solve their problem. They changed the ingredient. You can enter through the environment, change the room, change the light, change who's in it, change what's within arm's reach. Not because you're too weak to think your way out, but because the environment was never outside your thinking to begin with. You can enter through meaning. And notice, this is not just think positive, which I have no patience for. The placebo research shows that meaning changes physiology, but the meaning has to be one you actually hold, not one you're performing. The shift is not from "this is terrible" to "this is wonderful." It's from "this racing heart means I'm falling apart" to "this racing heart means my body is mobilizing." That's not a lie. It's a different, equally true, more useful reading of an ambiguous signal. And yes, you can enter through the mind, through attention and belief and deliberate practice. But now you know it's one door among four, and often not the strongest one. Here's what I'd want you to carry out of this, and it's really two things. The first is a kind of relief. If you have been trying to fix your life exclusively from the inside of your own head, and it has not been working, and you have taken that as evidence of some personal weakness, then I'd like to offer another explanation. You have been pushing on one door of four. Of course it was hard. That door was never carrying the whole weight. And the second is a shift in where you look for yourself. Every episode of this show has been chipping at the same idea from a different side. Dopamine isn't pleasure, it's prediction. Loneliness isn't a head count, it's an appraisal. Anxiety persists because the threat model never gets corrected. Willpower isn't a tank, it's a landscape. Certainty is a feeling, not a fact. Perception is inference. Today they all collapse into one sentence. You are not a mind that has a body and stands in a world and then decides what things mean. You are the ongoing conversation among all four, and it has been running your whole life, and it never once paused to ask your permission. But you can join it, not as the commander, because that job was never real, as a participant at any of four places, starting today. That's the stride from being a passenger towards something you can actually use. Thanks for walking it with me. I'm Esther Adams. This has been Strides to Solutions, and I'll see you next time.